Hello my lovely readers, Aline here, and I'm so excited to start this new journey of creating my first audiobook for The Girl with the 6 Marks. I'd first like to start off by saying thank you to each and every one of you for clicking on my story and giving me the support and motivation to creating my adaptation to the Marvel Universe. The past 2 years of my life have been so developing, and half of it is thanks to you. I'd like to make a disclaimer. Any references to the Marvel Universe, characters, settings, and powers do not belong to me. I do, however, own the wonderful and adventurous Alyanna Jones. If this is your first time reading, then let's hope you fall in love with our OC as much as our other readers have. I do have to warn you that my story contains mature themes best suited for young adults. Therefore, if you feel uncomfortable with swearing, violence, or sexual themes, then please click away now. With that being said, the main Marvel characters may fall a little out of character, but never fear, they are still the ones we hold dear to our hearts. Please excuse any background noise, for I do have a child who you may hear every once in a while, but I'll try my best to edit it out. Furthermore, please find a nice comfy spot, put your headphones in, and enjoy the ride that is my Soulmate universe. Lots of love, Aline. Billions of years ago, there lived a lonely entity that goes by many names, but most commonly known as Mania, the goddess or mother of souls. She gave birth to the soul of every creature in the universe and was known to be the one who controlled prophecies and destinies. However, with such power came a sad and lonely heart, for she was alone and craved the affection and attention of someone she could call her own. Upon realizing her dismay, she looked upon her children and saw that they too were unhappy with their lonesome lives. It was then that she decided that everyone deserved to have someone to love. On many planets, such as Asgard and Earth, they were called soulmates. Now, unlike common tales, you don't have to wonder if the person you're with is your soulmate, because at birth, they are tattooed with the symbol of your soul. Soulmates brought happiness and love to the universe, but it also brought jealousy and war. There was a flaw to Mania's work. Many creatures were not born with a soul mark, and therefore believed that they were destined to have a life full of hate and suffering. Little did they know that their soulmate had not been born yet, but it clouded their mind with darkness. Many creatures lost their soulmate, and therefore were left to live with a broken heart till they followed their mates to the other side. People died defending their soulmates, and to this day, life revolved around them. Those who remained markless continued to grieve and dwell with inner hate and jealousy, and lashed out at the thought of being stuck with someone forever. Some lost their loves to soulmates, and others had to sit back and watch as their friends and families were happily in love. Others accepted it and married other markless people, and lived the rest of their lives feeling half empty. The bond between souls cannot be broken or tampered with unless acted upon using the Soul Stone, a powerful source that was created by Mania herself, along with the other gods of the Infinity Stones. It remains safeguarded and hidden away somewhere in the universe. It was not uncommon for a person to bear the symbol of more than one soulmate. Although rare, the birth of a baby with multiple markings was no mistake, and they usually consisted with fulfilling a destiny. In modern times, a baby was born with a special prophecy, one that would save the universe in future times. That baby was born on Earth. The Girl with the 6 Marks. The Battle of New York City. Chapter 1. April 7th, 1989, 8:17 p.m. A loud wail rang throughout the hospital in the labor and delivering department of Houston Methodist Hospital. The most precious sound Kimberly Jones has ever heard, even as she gasped for air. She peeked up in time to see her beautiful baby girl appearing from between her legs, the doctor holding her as the nurses wrapped her in a warm blanket. Beside her, Dr. Arnold Jones clutched his soulmate's hand tightly as he beams proudly. "You did wonderful, my love," he cooed to her, kissing her knuckles sweetly. Kimberly pants, leaning back in exhaustion. "I want to see her," she managed to breathe out. The nurses handed her the bundle of joy, but their faces reflected concern, which did not go unnoticed by Dr. Jones. Kimberly held the precious bundle close to her chest while her soulmate gave the nurses a questionable glance. "What is it?" he finally says out loud. The head nurse, Trinity Vasquez, gave the others a worried glance before clearing her throat. "Dr. and Mrs. Jones, your daughter has a soul mark." Kimberly smiled brightly. "Well, that's wonderful. I wonder who they could be. Let's see that little soul mark, shall we?" she cooed before unraveling the blanket. "Wait, Mrs. Jones," but the nurse was cut off by a gasp. As Kimberly pushed the blanket down her daughter's back, it revealed a small thunderbolt on her neck and the large lime green flower in the center of her back. "Two?" Dr. Jones exclaims. Having two soulmates was not unheard of, but it was still a rare event. Nurse Vasquez swallowed before responding. "Not exactly." The nurse then proceeded to turn the baby to the right, then the left, exposing 2 more soul marks on each of her arms, along with 2 more on her ankles. "6?" Dr. Jones shouted, causing their baby to jump and begin to cry. Kimberly wrapped her back up and brought her back to her chest, gently rocking to ease her wails. "How can this happen? Has this ever been seen before?" the mother questioned. "We've called a soulmate expert already, and she is on the way," the nurse replies. "In my 12 years as a nurse, I have never seen such a thing." Dr. Jones was still shocked with the new information, and throughout his years with science and technology, he had never thought 6 soulmates were even possible. "Well, as long as she is healthy, that's all that matters. Our little Alyanna," Kimberly cooed, her lips coming down to peck the tiny forehead. Later on that evening, after the couple settled into the recovery room, a knock on the door was heard. The door opens to reveal a tall, gray-haired man and a small, fair-skinned woman. Arnold rises to his feet and greets the couple with a warm smile. "Howard, my friend, you made it!" He shakes Howard Stark's hand, who returned his smile. "When I heard Kimberly went into labor, me and Maria hopped on a plane and came here as fast as we could," he tells his old friend. Maria walks over to Kimberly in awe over the new baby girl. Arnold looks behind them. "Is Tony with you?" The owner of Stark Industries shakes his head. "He couldn't make it. He had other plans to partake in," he said coldly with slight disappointment. "Boys will be boys," Arnold chuckles before his face becomes serious. You would never guess what has happened. Next scene, Manhattan, New York City. Tony takes another shot as he wraps an arm around a young blonde girl. The crowd around him cheers as the music pumps throughout the penthouse. A young roadie pats Tony on the back. "Hey man, how did you get your parents to let you throw this sick party?" Tony shrugs nonchalantly. "They went out of town. Something about Dr. Jones's daughter being born or something." Roadie shakes his head and finishes off his beer before dancing away with a beautiful dark-skinned girl. Tony turns to the blonde girl and begins to kiss her neck when suddenly pain filled his chest. He pulls away, grasping his right breast as he suddenly begins to feel like it was on fire. He let out a shocked gasp as he stumbles away from the crowd of people who looked at him with confusion. He ignores their stares and bolts out of the room. He runs to the nearest bathroom, the pain intensifying. He grips the counter and practically rips off the shirt he had been wearing. He holds his chest and with wide eyes stares at his skin begin to change color right before his eyes. A dark branch with 6 bloomed cherry blossoms formed on his right breast. As the last flower appeared, the burning stopped and it grew cold. Tony continued to gasp as many emotions filled him. A soul mark? He had a soulmate, and they were just born. How could this have happened? Tony was sure that he was going to remain markless for the rest of his life. To be a playboy with beautiful girls, stunning mansions, and his inventions surrounding him to bring him happiness that he lacked throughout his childhood. Now there was someone who was destined to bring him love, compassion, and acceptance. But he was still young. He wasn't sure if he was ready to settle down yet. He put his shirt back on, fixed his hair, and washed his face. No one must know. The press would go crazy, and he would have countless of girls and boys ringing his doorbell claiming to be his soulmate. His fortune was more appealing than his apparel good looks and charming but sarcastic personality No, he would wait till his soulmate found him. Till then, he would continue to live his lifestyle, even though it took 23 years. Next scene, 17 years later. The door to the U.S. Army recruiting office jingled as a young Alyanna walked in confidently. This was the third office she's been to. The Navy, Air Force, and even the Marines wouldn't take her. Her last bet was the Army, the less picky of the branches. She could only hope that her soul marks wouldn't be the only factor of being denied enlistment into the military. A middle-aged African-American woman sat behind the desk wearing an Army uniform and supporting the rank of Master Sergeant. She looked up from her laptop screen to peer up at the teenager. She was small and frail-looking, not really military material, Master Sergeant Williams thought in her head. Alyanna could already see the skepticism in the woman's eyes, but after being turned down 3 times, she was not backing out over a stare. "Can I help you?" the military woman says in a monotone voice. Alyanna stood up straighter. "I would like to join the Army, ma'am," she said in the most confident voice. The sergeant lifted an eyebrow. "What's your name?" "Alyanna Jones," she answered, sticking out her hand. "Sergeant Kathy Williams," the woman replies, taking her hand. "Have a seat," she motions to the cold metal chair that was placed in front of her desk. Alyanna's eyes lit up momentarily before she shook it off and sat down. Williams placed her laptop aside before pulling out some papers. "So, Jones, are you in high school?" "I graduate in May," she responds. "Do you want to go to college?" Alyanna scratches her leg nervously. Not sure, honestly." William narrows her eyes. "Most people who walk in here only sign up to get money for college." Biting the inside of her cheek, Alyanna gives her a small shrug. "No, my father is a scientist for Stark Industries. We have the money." "Stark Industries? You could pretty much get a full ride anywhere. So why enlist?" The older woman continues to question. "I never saw myself sitting in a classroom or in an office building, ma'am. I want to get out on the front lines and serve." "Infantry?" The soldier raises an eyebrow. "I was hoping for special forces, ma'am," she states boldly. "My goal is to become the first female Green Beret." William looks taken back by Alyanna's declaration. "That's some mighty big boots to fill," she responds skeptically. "You do know you must meet the max male qualifications in order to even be considered, right?" Giving her a short nod, Alyanna acknowledges the challenge. "I've been preparing for this since I was 13. While other girls my age tried out for cheerleading or volleyball, I was training in martial arts and jiu-jitsu and winning competitions. While girls my age spent their free time shopping with friends or getting into trouble, I was at the rifle range. I'm fluent in Vietnamese and currently studying Arabic. I've studied military history, combative strategies, and protocols my whole life. I was born to do this." The woman in front of her didn't give any reaction to what Alyanna was saying. She remained neutral as she absorbed all the information. Leaning forward, Sergeant Williams rested her elbows against her desk. She stared deeply into the younger girl's eyes, finally breaking out into a smile as she saw the fire engulfing in Alyanna's pupils. "What's the catch?" "Sure, you're 17, but there has to be something else. Why is this little firecracker sitting in my seat and not somewhere else? Didn't want to be a Marine? Or a Navy SEAL?" Alyanna looks down briefly, her tough exterior slightly wounded. She twiddles her thumb nervously. "Well, they all rejected me." Nodding, Williams pressed for more information. "It's because," Alyanna was hesitant, but she knew that they were going to find out sooner or later. "I have a soul mark." Letting out a snort of a laugh, Williams pushes off from her desk and leans back into her chair. "Ha, that's it, sweetheart. Most everyone has a soul mark. Who's your soulmate? The president?" "I actually don't know who my soulmates are," she continued. This caused William to pause. "You mean as in plural?" Swallowing, this is usually where the recruiter would reject her. "I have 6. She expected the woman in front of her to look surprised, shocked, or even disgusted. Instead, her eyes softened. "I can see why you've been having a hard time finding a recruiter to enlist you. Having unknown or many soulmates can be a good or bad thing. It poses a risk for one of them being part of the enemy, which could lead to treason. Your chances of becoming special forces is highly unlikely, unless you were to find your soulmates and they all pass security clearances. However, I will help you get into the army. After basic, it's up to you what happens with your path. Alyanna couldn't believe her ears. She shot up from her seat in excitement. Really? She then realized her composure and she cleared her throat. I mean, thank you. This is like a dream come true. Sergeant Williams pushed a few pieces of paper in front of her. She knew that this little girl had the potential to do something great. Just read and sign these, then you'll be on your way to making a difference. Alyanna smiled as she picked up the pen. Next scene, 6 years and 4 months later. Manhattan, New York City. 5-star hotel. Alyanna Jones looked at herself in the mirror. She was of average height, with toned arms and legs and slightly wide hips. She was a mix of Vietnamese and American, giving her the almond exotic brown eyes and long dark hair. She was dressed in a brilliant red mermaid dress, running up to her neck and down her arms. Her hair was done in a beautiful braided bun, and her makeup was simple with thick winged eyeliner. On her right shoulder, covered by the fabric, was one of her marks. It is a circle with an upside-down red outline triangle in the middle. It's the size of her palm and caressed her shoulder gently. On her left shoulder was her other mark, a blue circle with a red star in the middle. Again, the size of her palm. On her neck, right above her spine, was a lightning bolt, her third mark. Below that, in the middle of her back, was a lime green flower with a yellow center. This was her biggest mark, the size of a small dinner plate. Her last 2 marks were on each of her ankles, a red hourglass on her right ankle and a bow and arrow on her left. Alyanna was the daughter of Arnold and Kimberly Jones, a scientist and a science school teacher. Her mother was adopted in the U.S. when she was 9 years old, and at the age of 20, she met her soulmate during a Stark Weapons convention where her father was showcasing a new invention with Howard Stark. They married, and years later, they had her. But to say they were shocked by what marked their baby girl would be an understatement. Throughout her childhood, she dealt with many stares, for no one has seen someone have so many soulmates before. Some gave her looks of envy, while others with pity. She spent 6 years in the service and served 3 tours to Iraq, where she earned the Medal of Honor for saving her commander and squad while caught in the line of fire. Although Howard Stark died a few years after her birth, her father continued to work for Stark Industries till his retirement. Since her father had been one of Howard Stark's most trusted and loyal friends for many years, his son Tony decided to invite her to an honorary banquet to celebrate her return and acknowledgement of her service. She found it highly unnecessary, but considering Stark had been generous enough to even recognize her, she figured she shouldn't turn down the billionaire playboy. I still don't see why I'm the honored guest tonight. I have never even met Mr. Stark. Why would he be interested in throwing me such an event? She says into her phone. Her childhood best friend Annie was on the other end. She hears a chuckle from her phone. If you found out that one of your father's best friend's daughter is a freaking war hero, wouldn't you want to show that off? She sighs, reaching up and pinning back a loose strand of hair with a bobby pin. I still don't believe I deserve all this. I was just doing my job. Allie, you ran through enemy fire with your wounded commander on your back. You took out 5 enemy soldiers while saving his life. You saved the whole squad. You are a hero, Annie tells her sincerely, her voice laced with emotion. Alyanna stares at her reflection, closing her eyes as the flashback of the scene played back into her mind. The yelling, the loud crack of rifles going off, the shouts of her men, and the explosion of grenades being thrown fills her mind. She snaps her eyes open. I was only doing what was right of me. I do appreciate being recognized, but a banquet for just me is a little much. Besides, what I did is nothing in comparison to what Iron Man does. Annie scoffs, waving her hand in the air. Give you a suit too, and you'll be saving cities as well. Now shut up. You look beautiful tonight. Just go, smile, have fun. Maybe you'll even meet one of your soulmates. Alyanna couldn't help but roll her eyes. I have 6 soulmates, and it's been 23 years, and not a single one has found me. Maybe they are all in one place, Annie teases. Maybe it's Stark himself. The magazines say he has a mark, but still hasn't found her. Maybe that is why he's throwing this party for you. Alyanna dismisses her. Annie, he's like 50 years old. Actually, he's only 41, and can I say sexy? Not to mention rich. She rolls her eyes again, but in the pit of her stomach she couldn't help but feel the tickle of butterfly wings. What if he was one of her soulmates, and the party was just a way to get to her? She shook her head to rid of the thoughts. No sane person could wait that long after knowing who their soulmate was. She glanced at the clock above her toilet. Crap! The limo will be here in 10 minutes. Sorry, Annie, but I have to get going. I'll call you tomorrow and tell you how it goes. Good luck, darling. Next scene. In the limo, pulling up to Stark Tower. The door opens and Alyanna steps out of the sleek black limo. As soon as her silver heel hits the ground, she was assaulted with the shouting and flashing cameras. She had to close her eyes and take a deep breath, trying her best to ignore the noise, for it began to make her feel anxious. She paced a smile on her face and began to walk down the deep blue carpet, nodding to everyone in appreciation. She was met with a man in uniform at the door. She recognized him as Captain Randy Thomas, one of the officers at her unit. He offered her his arm. Sergeant Jones, it is a pleasure and honor to be able to escort you to this evening. Alyanna blushes, taking his arm. Thank you, sir. It is a pleasure to be here. He smiles before leading her through the big doors into the main room. The ballroom was extravagant, with huge windows lining the walls, brilliant chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, and dozens of circle tables with white tablecloth and red roses as centerpieces. She couldn't help but gawk. Captain Thomas led her to a small room where the reception was being held. Will I be meeting Mr. Stark before the banquet begins? She asked Captain Thomas, her eyes scanning around to all the people in the room. Unfortunately, Iron Man will be missing the reception, but he will be present to give you an award, he answers, grabbing a small cocktail for both of them. Grabbing the drink, Alyanna had to swallow the disappointment. Late to his own banquet? Captain Thomas gave her an apologetic smile. No, tonight, ma'am, it's your banquet. Alyanna had to stop herself from grimacing. She walked around the room where she was introduced to almost everyone. Many of the people were highly important personnel in the government or high-ranking officers in the military. Each greeted her warmly. By the end of the hour, she had forgotten almost all their names and was ready to leave, but she still had 3 more hours to go. One person stood out to her, though. Lieutenant Colonel James Rhodes, Air Force liaison to Stark Industries. He approached her warmly, offering his hand. Sergeant Jones, it's a pleasure to meet you, Rhodes greets her. I'm James Rhodes. She shakes his hand firmly, smiling in return. The pleasure's all mine. Tony wishes to extend his apologies for arriving late. He had a few things to take care of, he smiled sheepishly. Alyanna knew exactly what he meant. Iron Man stuff? Chuckling, he confirms her belief. Iron Man stuff. When Tony Stark had first came out as Iron Man, Alyanna had been on her second tour. She remembered watching the TV press conference a year after Stark had gone missing in Afghanistan. She had almost been assigned to escort him, but the Air Force decided to take on the mission. Unfortunately, those airmen didn't survive, and Tony had remained a prisoner for 3 months. Alyanna had always wondered what would have happened if she had been the one to go. Everyone finally began to make their way back to the ballroom, taking their seats as the first toast and speech began. There was still no sign of Mr. Stark. Her commander, Colonel Julian Martinez, who was still recovering from the attack, was the first to speak. Never in my 30 years of service have I ever met someone as strong and brilliant as Sergeant Jones. If she had not done what she did, me and some of our fellow soldiers would have flown home wrapped in the American flag. He went on to describe the amazing things she had done as well as listed some of her other accomplishments. She felt tears swell in her eyes as she listened to the kind words of praise and the raw emotion he expressed when speaking of their lives and how proud her family must be. It is with my utmost honor and privilege to say this, Colonel Martinez turned to her. Thank you. He then salutes her and she nods in return, gently reaching up and wiping tears away from her eyes. She smiled brightly as everyone clapped and cheered.
The light suddenly changed color, and the back windows began to move downwards. There was a loud bang, and everyone gasped and turned to see a bright light moving quickly towards the tower. Panic began to set in, but it was quickly diffused when they saw what it was. Iron Man had finally arrived. Tony Stark flew in gracefully, capturing everyone's attention as he landed right on the stage. Everyone clapped and cheered as his metal suit began to retract to reveal him dressed in a black tux. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry I was running late. I was stuck in traffic." The court erupted into laughter. Alyanna felt her whole body tense up at seeing him. Her right shoulder began to burn and itch, and she couldn't help but let out a short gasp. Tony felt his soul mark on his right breast begin to stir. He paused slightly, his eyes scanning the room in wonders of who could be causing this sensation. For 23 years since the mark appeared, he had not once felt it, but tonight it felt like it was on fire. His soulmate must be here. But since he was in front of all these people, and tonight was about honoring Dr. Jones's daughter, he will be searching for his soulmate during dinner. "If I calculated this correctly," he muttered under his breath, straightening up his tux. "Colonel Martinez, thank you for your wonderful words to our honored guests. Speaking of that," Tony pauses to walk to the podium where he had bent down to retrieve a large plaque. "I must say how truly impressed I am to know that a close friend of mine had a daughter in the service. To say that she is now a Medal of Honor recipient is remarkable. I had heard of what Sergeant Alyanna Jones did for her platoon, and for that I would like to present this plaque and a check for $250,000 donated to the Wounded Warrior Program in Mrs. Jones' name." Confetti blew everywhere and the crowd went wild. "So Sergeant Jones, if you could please come to the stage." Alyanna felt her whole body stiffen at his words. Not only was that a lot of money to a good cause, but now all the attention was directed on her. The spotlight felt hot on her body, but not as hot as her shoulder. She gulped and slowly rose, gaining Tony's attention. His eyes flickered to her, finally seeing where she had been sitting. It was at that moment his whole world froze.
Hi, my lovely readers, this is Aline, and this concludes the first chapter of The Girl with the Six Marks. I hope you enjoyed the audiobook, and I do apologize for any mistakes I've made or any background noises. I've never been the most confident, out loud reader, so this is a big step for me. Don't forget to like and subscribe or comment down below your favorite part, and stay tuned for the next chapter to be uploaded. Thank you so much for your support, and I love you all.